Hi there, welcome to another YouTube Live. I knew having the dog in the studio was going to be dangerous, but I am going to carry on anyway. Welcome to another YouTube Live, Musical Musing. Today's topic of conversation is how to stay motivated as a composer muted, so how to stay creative and inspired. I knew I should have put him outside. So this came off the back of the conversation I was having with someone, and I felt it's a good thing to sort of look at. And I'm just going to share with you a number of things that I do on a kind of daily basis, or at least try to stay conscious of, in order to kind of maintain a level of creativity and inspiration. But before I do, if you're new to the channel, welcome. This channel is dedicated to dogs. Well, it's not. It's dedicated to helping music makers monetize their music through winning sort of TV sync placements for film, TV ads. So if you are a composer or a producer or even an artist and you are interested in that and the writing process, production, mixing, then make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring my bell. That way we will be friends forever. I'm going to dive straight into this. I've even prepared a little slideshow. Let's have a look at these. As ever, this is highly interactive, so if you've got anything you want to throw into the mix, please do let me know in the chat. And please, let me know as well if you have ever suffered from sort of lack of motivation or creativity within the sort of creative field, then give me a thumbs up just to sort of let me know. So the first thing to mention, I think for me, is Parkinson's Law. Parkinson's Law is the idea that if you give someone or give yourself 3 weeks to do something, you will make it last 3 weeks. If you give yourself 3 hours to do something, you will manage to find a way to do it within 3 hours. This is going well. I've got peanut butter in my throat and a dog on my lap. Chill out. So staying conscious of this whilst you're working and setting a timer and being strict and having a certain window within the day in which to achieve something and set out your stall to achieve it, it kind of forces you to dig deep and achieve what otherwise might take you much longer to do it. And I think with the creative process, the tendency is to sort of like eke things out. So Parkinson's Law, set a timer, be strict with time. That's something that really helps me. To that end, and something I sort of touched on last week with the working from home thing, is planning. Obviously, if you've penciled in a certain amount of time to achieve, to flesh out an arrangement or write a track, then that's set in stone and you've got that for Parkinson's Law. But also what I do every Sunday is I plan every single day of the week, because that frees up my headspace for creative endeavor. I don't get in the morning and think, oh, right, what have I got to do today? I do it all on a Sunday night. I know literally walk in at 9 o'clock in the morning and exactly what I've got to do, and I know what I'll be doing at 12 or 3 or whatever. So planning, free up a bit of headspace. Just do it. Buy some Nike trainers. No, this is the idea of don't wait for inspiration. If you've ever read The War of Art, which is a book by Stephen Pressfield, he talks about resistance, which as a creative is that idea that you don't sit down to do something because you're waiting for inspiration or you've got writer's block, but it's a case of just literally sitting down and doing it. You don't wait for inspiration. You almost have to create that inspiration. And even by very virtue of just sitting down and doing it, there's something always comes out of that process, and sort of being sort of rigorous in your approach. So just do it. Be present. This is a big one because I think the creative process is all about getting in the flow. Now, if you are worried about the end product, or you're focused on the end product and where the piece of music is going, obviously, you have to be mindful of what you're trying to produce, and having a vision is important. But if the focus is on that rather than in the now, in the moment of what you're doing, I sort of tend to find that can be, a kind of quite a destructive process, because you're in the future rather than the now, and you can only create in the now. Can you tell I've been reading Eckhart Tolle recently? But yeah, be present. Make sure you're focused on the now and what you're doing at that given moment. Write for the bin. This is a massive one that helped me, because I always feel that pressure is a great way to stifle creativity. And back before I started doing music professionally, I always used to talk about, oh, I really want to be a music producer, but I would always find 101 things to do other than sitting down and making music. The reason being is I was putting an immense amount of pressure on myself to create a masterpiece. So if I wasn't going to create a masterpiece in a 2-3 hour window that I had, then why bother? But now I am totally comfortable with the idea of sitting down, writing something, and if it's crap, throw it away. And in actual fact, I think it's quite interesting, the idea of failure, because I think weirdly, when you fail at something, you end up learning more than you do from the successes. And there's a really good Neil Gaiman quote along the lines of, better to finish a failure than write a success. So I think that's definitely an important thing, is to switch the mindset. And I've done it, and sort of now never have writer's block, and I don't put that pressure on myself. Switch the mindset so that you're in a position to just throw away what you've done at the end of the day if it's not good. But the chances are, when you take the pressure off, everything you do is always good, he says. As a quick one, if you have anything you want to add to conversation, any tips that you employ, any sort of mindset, sort of whatever, because I suppose this is a sort of general mindset, mental health kind of thing, then do let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear them, because obviously these are things that help me and things that I've discovered over the years. But if anybody can share theirs, I'd love to hear them. Be playful. I think, again, this sort of ties in with the writing for the bin, but starting a piece of music or starting composing or producing in a slightly different way. Like if you're someone who always starts with a beat, change it up and start with sitting down at a piano. Or if you always compose on a piano, start with a bass line. Just change the way, be playful. Or I did something a few months ago or a few weeks ago, can't remember now because they all roll into one because of coronavirus, because I never go anywhere or do anything. But I basically had a little kind of violin loop / motif thing. And I thought, right, that's my starting point. I'm going to write a whole piece of music around that weird. And it just changed my process. It changed the way I approached it. It changed sort of like, it created a sort of playful nature around it. And ultimately, you know, we're being creative, we're creating. So it should be fun. It should be playful. So go crazy, get experimental. Learn someone else's song. For example, Barbie Girl by Aqua. That's obviously a glib one, but back in the day, I used to teach guitar, and a lot of my guitar lessons were me teaching people songs that they wanted to learn. So as such, I would have to go away and learn those songs. But there's always a lot of merit in doing that, because you kind of like find nice little different chord voicings or progressions that you'd not thought of, or different tuning on a guitar or whatever it was. Even recently, I kind of sat down to learn the Jurassic Park theme tune on the piano. And again, just sort of doing that just kind of like showed me some nice voicings and sort of different chords and things like that. So I always think that learning someone else's song is a great way to kind of get inspired. Obviously, I'm not encouraging people plagiarizing and copying other people's work, but you get my drift. Self-care, this is a kind of sort of like highfalutin sort of one, but I think it's so important. The tendency is with, I think, music production and composing is you get in the flow and you forget to eat, and it reaches 2 a.m. and you've been at it for 16 hours. But I actually have found with time that regular eating and sleeping habits basically help me. You know, the better you look after your mind, the more sharper tool it is. And certainly with eating and sleeping, in terms of regular eating and sleeping times equals regular or very regular. Your hormones are well regulated, and obviously that's super important for maintaining general sort of healthcare. So self-care is like a huge one. I suppose on the topic of self-care is get outside. As you've seen, Rudy is in the studio with me. He comes into the studio a couple of days a week, and that forces me every lunchtime, come rain or shine, I've got to get out the studio and take him for a walk, because if not, he'll be crawling up the walls and urinating on everything. So by taking him out and doing that, it kind of takes me away from what I'm doing. It gets me out into the fresh air. It gets me moving around, the blood circulating, communing with nature as much as that's possible in a massive park in the middle of London. But just also stepping away. Sometimes stepping away from a piece of work is the best thing you can do, because you tend to get sort of lost in the rabbit hole. And the last one, which basically have you all reaching for the end this video button, is avoid social media for 2 reasons. One, because I find social media is an amazing time suck. I can go on there for hours and come back out later with nothing to show for it except, you know, lost hours. But also something I touched on in one of the issues about musical musings about mental health is like this idea of self-comparison. I think a lot of creatives sort of suffer from self-comparison. And if you're on social media constantly seeing what other people are doing, not necessarily in a professional sphere, also in a personal one, that kind of, I think, accentuates and aggravates this kind of idea of self-comparison. So staying off social media is a good one. Obviously, a lot of you are going like, no, Jim, but I love social media. But okay, so maybe before the workday, save it for after the workday, or, you know, be strict with when it is, because I just find it a massive, massive problem. Boom. Wow. That was my, I think there were 10 tips there, or 9, can't remember, in terms of how to sort of maintain creativity and inspiration, and all of those things sort of help me on a daily basis. Going to go have a look at the comments, see if anyone has piped in. Our Penguin Boy says that's going to help me. Hopefully all of them. Or is there a particular one, mate, that you found resonated with you? And he's also saying very useful tips. Hope so, mate. As I say, these are all things which have been invaluable, and it's taken me kind of the best part of 13 years to work them all out. If I'd known all these 13 years ago, life might have been a bit easier and I may have progressed quicker than I did. But anyway, it is what it is, and I wouldn't go back. But they've all massively helped me. So if anyone else out there has got any sort of like top tips or suggestions, then let me know. Bob Swift, I'm conscious I've got my glasses on, so I can't read these very well. How do you know when to move on from one creative project to another? Oh, wow, that's a deep question, Bob. If I can call you Bob. Obviously, your name's Robert Swift, and there's me being very presumptuous that I can call you Bob. It's hard to know, but I think certainly with a creative project, when you get to a point where you're making tweak after tweak after tweak for hours on end, which is not really making any major difference, then you know it's time to let go. But something else I talked about in another video was about the idea of striving for excellence, not perfection. I think trying to get it perfect doesn't exist, so it makes it impossible. Whereas if it's excellent, or Seth Godin in his book, This is Marketing, talks about as close as necessary to perfection. So for what it is, for whatever the client need is, or for whatever the project is, making sure it's as good as possible within those constraints. So obviously, if it's a massive Hollywood score, it would need to be, you know, this up here. Whereas if it's for a small kids TV program on the internet, maybe the bar's down here. But getting as close as necessary to perfection, or as excellent as is needed or is required by the client. And yeah, as I say, if I tend to go down a rabbit hole of, you know, losing hours and making tweaks which the average person isn't going to hear, then I know it's time to kind of leave it alone. Sam Jones is saying sound suggestions, Jim. Thanks, Sam. I hope so. Our Penguin Boy, just do it. Probably the best one. Yeah, well, it's definitely, if you haven't read The War of Art by Stephen J. Pressfield, just the chapter alone on resistance is really interesting. It's the idea that writer's block does not exist. It's just basically resistance because your fear of not achieving what you want to, or whatever it is. So if you can overcome that, that's all good. Sam Jones is saying, I find I rarely don't have a new idea, fresh perspective after walking away from the desk for a bit, ideally outside, like you say. Yeah, I think it's a fine line, because on the one hand, you kind of get into this creative flow and you're in it and you don't want to leave, you don't want to step away because it might kill the flow. But it gets to a point, and this ties in with what Bob Swift was saying, where actually sometimes stepping away is the best thing to do, or maybe even leaving it completely because it is finished. So there you go. That's my musical musing for today. As ever, I am here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. If there is a particular topic of conversation that you would like me to cover in these musical musings, then let me know. I'm releasing production and composing videos every Thursday, although I didn't do one last Thursday and I haven't got one this Thursday, but Thursday after, there's definitely going to be one. So tune in at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'll come back to these. And as I say, it's interactive, so hit me up. If by any chance you don't get a chance in the comments section, or you prefer to email me, you can do so at library@larpmusic.com. Send me an email with topics of conversation. There can be anything from sort of business side to mental health side to production, writing, or just general kind of life. And I will do my best to certainly offer my thoughts on it. They are by no means the be all and end all and definitive. They're just literally kind of from my own personal experience, and I'm happy to share that in the hope that others may learn from my failings. So thanks very much for tuning in. See you same time next week. Bye for now.